All right, let's dive into chapter 16 of the Bhagavad Gita. This chapter is fascinating because it's like a deep psychological map. It lays out two really fundamental paths that we can all walk. One path leads to total freedom, and the other, well, that one leads to a kind of prison we build for ourselves. We're going to break down exactly what these are, and you'll see why this ancient wisdom is maybe more relevant today than ever.
And boom, the Gita just drops this on us right away. No warm-up. It says, the divine nature is for liberation and the demonic for bondage. The stakes could not be higher, right? And this isn't some, lofty abstract philosophy. It's super practical. It's basically a diagnosis of the human condition, showing us how the stuff going on inside of us, our qualities, our mindset, literally shapes the world we experience on the outside.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the two natures and where they lead. Then we'll dig into the qualities of the divine path. After that, we'll get into the demonic worldview, what that looks and feels like. We'll also talk about the three gates, which are pretty intense, and we'll wrap up with the Gita's final word on what should guide us.
Okay, so right at the beginning, the chapter paints this picture of a really fundamental duality. It's like it's saying we're all born with one of two basic operating systems, if you will. You've got the divine nature or you've got the demonic one. And this core programming, it really ends up shaping your entire life's journey.
And this is the central conflict of the whole chapter, right here. On one side, you have the divine nature. In Sanskrit, it's called Daivi Sampad. This is the path to liberation, to freedom. On the other side, you've got the demonic nature, or Asuri Sampad. The Gita is super clear that this path leads straight to bondage and suffering. It's a choice, really. The path you choose to nurture is what decides your final destination.
All right, let's start on a positive note, shall we? Let's talk about the divine qualities. The Gita gives us this incredible list of virtues, but it's not just a checklist of things to do to be good. It's way more than that. Think of it like a blueprint, a guide for building a mind that's truly wired for freedom and peace.
So check out this list. It's this beautiful tapestry of qualities. And like I said, it's not just about being nice, it's about building a complete, holistic character. You see this amazing mix, right? You've got inner strengths like fearlessness and a pure mind. Then you have these crucial social values, nonviolence, truthfulness, compassion for everyone. And on top of that, there are personal disciplines for finding inner peace, like renunciation and letting go of anger. It's the whole package. Put them all together and you've got that blueprint for a free mind.
Okay, now we have to look at the flip side. And to explain the demonic nature, the Gita does something really brilliant. It doesn't just give you a laundry list of bad things. No, it creates this incredibly detailed psychological profile. It literally takes us inside the head of someone with this mindset so we can see the core beliefs that are driving all the destructive behavior.
And it all starts right here. The whole demonic nature is built on one simple but devastating foundation, a total confusion about what's right and what's wrong. It's like they're navigating without an inner compass for things like purity, proper conduct, or truth. And when that compass is gone, well, their actions are bound to become chaotic and ultimately really harmful.
So from that moral confusion, a very specific worldview starts to form. They look around and say, you know what? This world is unreal. There's no God, no real foundation, no higher purpose. And if you believe that, what's left? Think about it. All that's left is your own personal desire. Lust becomes the engine that drives everything. It's a philosophy that just screams, get yours now, because this is all there is.
And once that worldview takes hold, it's like a chain reaction. This insatiable desire, it naturally leads to other things. If getting what you want is the only thing that matters, then of course things like hypocrisy, pride, and arrogance, they stop being flaws and start becoming useful tools, right? And your actions become unholy pretty much by default because the very idea of holy just doesn't exist in that worldview anyway.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The Gita actually gives us a peek into their inner monologue. It's like we're listening to their thoughts. Today I got this, I have this much money, and tomorrow I'm going to get even more. Do you hear that? The focus is always on accumulation, gaining more, having more, acquiring more. It's a mindset that can literally never be satisfied.
Wow. And it just keeps going. This next thought takes it to a whole other level. It reveals the massive ego at the core of this whole thing. I killed that enemy, and I'll kill others too. I am the Lord, I am the enjoyer, I am perfect, powerful, and happy. You hear that? I am the Lord. It's this deep-seated belief that they are the absolute center of the universe, the one in control. And any happiness or power they feel, it's built entirely on dominating everyone else. So what's the end game here? Where does all this lead? Well, here's the catch. It's not true power or lasting happiness. The final result is just chaos. Total internal chaos. They're confused, pulled in a million different directions by all these desires, and completely caught up in delusion. And this addiction to just feeling good, to sense gratification, the Gita warns that it leads them straight into what it calls an impure existence, basically a hell of their own making.
Now the Gita is amazing because it can take this whole complex psychological process and boil it down to its absolute essence. It says this entire path to self-destruction is fueled by three main things. It calls them the three gates to hell. What a powerful metaphor, right? These are the three core vices that guarantee you'll ruin yourself.
That's it, just three. It's so simple, so memorable. And the argument here is that if you can just get a handle on these three things, if you can understand them and master them, you can avoid that entire downward spiral we've been talking about.
So what are they? Lust, anger, and greed. But here's the key. The Gita doesn't just see them as a random list of bad habits. It sees them as a chain reaction. It all starts with kama, which is lust or just this really intense desire for something. Now, what happens when you don't get what you want? That desire gets blocked, and boom, it instantly turns into krodha, or anger. And then there's lobha, greed, which is just that desire becoming chronic, this endless, gnawing hunger for more. You can see how they just feed off each other, creating a vicious cycle.
So the instruction couldn't be more direct. It's simple. You must abandon these three. The text is very clear that if you can let go of lust, anger, and greed, you're basically freeing yourself from these gates of darkness. And once you're free, you can finally start acting in a way that's actually good for you, a way that leads you toward that supreme destination.
And that brings us to the very end of the chapter, and its final, crucial piece of advice. So we've seen these two totally opposite paths. We've seen where they lead. Now the Gita gives us one last definitive instruction on how to make sure you stay on the right track, the one that leads to liberation.
So it all comes down to this one question, doesn't it? With these two paths in front of us, what should guide our actions? I mean, in a world that's so confusing, full of conflicting desires and all sorts of moral gray areas, what can you actually rely on to tell you what to do and what not to do?
Well, first the Gita tells us what not to follow, and that's our own whims. Just acting on impulse, acting from desire, as the text says, that's a total dead end. It makes it really clear that if you just follow every whim, you're never going to find perfection, you're not going to find happiness, and you definitely won't reach that supreme destination.
And then it gives us the final, definitive answer. Therefore, let the scriptures be your authority in determining what ought to be done and what ought not to be done. So instead of just chasing our impulses, the advice is to connect our actions to a source of timeless wisdom. The scriptures are presented as that ultimate guide for navigating this internal battle that we all have, that fight between our own divine and demonic sides. And so the chapter doesn't really end with an answer, does it? It ends with a challenge for every single one of us. Can we find a source of wisdom that's higher and more reliable than our own fleeting desires?